Okay guys, this is Brandon again, and we're going to do another project tonight. Trying to do Facebook Live for the very first time for me, just because we've been having some trouble getting the videos to load on some of the other series that we've done. Tonight we're going to look at doing something a little bit different than we have on the last two projects. We'll still use some of the things that we've learned from those projects, but hopefully add a little new elements to it. So I'm going to do a small project first, since this is my first kind of go around with Facebook Live. And if everything goes well, if I'm able to get the video to go to the group and you guys can all see it and follow along, then I'll do the kind of the bigger project, which will be a little bit different, but it'll use a lot of the things that we're going to do on this project. So looking at supplies, I'm using again my small piece of paper that I did on the bird on a branch drawing, the last video that you might have seen. Postcard size, certainly you can use any kind of paper, any size paper. I just like to do these little postcards and send them to friends and that kind of stuff. So it works out really well for this type of art. Again, I've got it masked off around the edges, leaves a nice little white border, and it also helps me kind of keep track of my picture when I have it on, attached to a larger surface. So the supplies that we're going to use for this project, we're going to use our pencil, and again, I use a 6H pencil just because it has a really hard lead, makes really light lines, easy to erase, and easy to hide in the art if I don't get all the lines erased. Aside from that, I'm going to use a regular ink pen. This is a Super Ink by Uniball. It's a fine point pen. You can use the same click pen or Bic stick that you used the other night. Just remember those do smear a little bit underneath the ink. The difference with this one is this is a smear-proof ink. So I'm going to use this for this project tonight. In addition to those, I'm going to use my brush tip pen. Just one tonight. I'm going to use the hard brush tip just so that I can get some kind of nice crisp lines on our picture. We're going to do very loose colors on this kind of thing, and so I want to be able to do kind of more solid, tighter line work to kind of draw the attention back to the picture, what we're trying to describe with our drawing. A change tonight on this project, I'm going to use just regular crayola washable markers, just like most of you guys have at home. I know a lot of you guys have seen me using the markers that I use for all the projects that I work on the Marvel cards, things like that. I use Copic markers and Prismacolors as my professional art markers. Tonight, let's see if I can remember how to use just regular markers like everybody else. And so simple color palette here, because we're going to do a simple drawing, but we're going to do a different little technique that you probably didn't even know that your markers could do. So I have a yellow, orange, green, blue, and brown. And then in addition to our pencil, our pen, our marker, which if you don't have a brush marker, use a Sharpie. In addition to all of our colored markers, I want you tonight to also have a paintbrush, just a regular plain old paintbrush will do, and then a small cup of water. And what I'm using for mine is like a little cough medicine cup, because it really doesn't take a whole lot of water. It's a small picture, and we're going to make a watercolor painting type picture with your markers. And we're going to do that with these water-based ink markers. We'll be able to kind of control a little bit the way that the ink bleeds on them, and it'll make a watercolor effect. So a little bit different than something that we worked on in the past two videos. Let's go ahead and get started. Once you've got your supplies together, or if you watch the video on playback at a later time, that's fine too. Just going to start out about a third of the way up my picture. I'm just going to kind of very lightly kind of pencil in where I want the ground to be on my picture. And then I'm going to come about half of that distance, and I'm going to bring just a kind of a straight, smooth, bold line like I always tell you guys to do, and kind of come down to a point there, and then kind of the same thing over here on the other side. So I hope that you guys all got a chance to play outside today. It was nice intermittently between the rain, but the weather was nice to get outside, get some fresh air with all the stuff going on. It's kind of nice to get out of the house a little bit and, you know, see the sky and breathe in all the fresh air. We went for a walk today for a couple miles, and then Braden got in his kayak and paddled around the lake with some of his friends. And I pretty well just kind of hung out around the house after all that, and thought of some ideas for us to draw on together. So now that we've got these two pieces together, I'm going to kind of outline about where I want, we're going to do a sunflower. And so I'm going to put this right here. That's the center. If you ever remember looking at sunflowers, they have a really big middle area, and then they have lots of neat looking petals. And so we'll just kind of hint at that a little bit here in just a moment. I'm going to put kind of another circle in here, so we're kind of making a real soft outline. Kind of looks like a donut floating in space right now. I'm going to go ahead just so that I know where my lines are going to go. Again, real light, because most of this will be covered up. Remember when we did the bird, we covered up a lot of our background tree branches and stuff, but it's still kind of nice to know where you're at in the drawing. And then off of this, I'm going to make a heart-shaped leaf, and it's okay if they overlap. We'll figure that all out toward the end, and then go ahead and make your branch all the way down to the end, and then we're going to alternate some veins in that leaf. And then I'll do the same on this side, but I don't want them to be right across from each other. I kind of want those to alternate as well. So just another line here, and maybe curve it back over like that, and then just another kind of a heart-shaped leaf. So kind of coming up with the idea for this, I kind of got to thinking about all the stuff that's going on. You guys are probably enjoying missing a little bit of school, but you probably miss your friends, miss your teachers, miss all the activities and things like that. Braden kind of mentioned today, he kind of misses his swim team and being able to go to town and do stuff. And so sometimes it kind of feels like there's just a lot going on. Maybe mom and dad are a little bit worried about what's going on, and it's just real easy to kind of get tied up in all that. So kind of the theme of our picture is that, even though it's kind of raining now, the sun's going to come back out eventually. Even though we're kind of going through a tough time as a community all around the world, eventually things will be back to normal. And we just want to kind of keep focused on that. So that's kind of where the idea came from, to do, just this brightly colored sunflower. And so to do the petals on this, I know a lot of you guys have drawn flowers like this before, but maybe not quite this way. I do a curve, go in this direction, and then kind of a double curve, or like an S shape that way. And then right where that one ends, I do my curve, and then kind of my double curve, and then another curve, and a double curve, and so forth, all the way around. Keeping my pencil lines nice and light, because again, we haven't decided what all is going to show through where. We haven't made our mind up yet. Remember, our drawings sometimes change from the pencil sketch stage to the ink stage, to the color stage, to the detail stage. So we like to give ourselves the opportunity to change things when we want. So the best way to do that is to, just make nice, smooth, even lines that are light with the pencil. And all the way around. And so we want to give this sunflower kind of the other layer. And to do that, I'm going to make kind of like a shark fin, just going kind of the other direction, just to kind of make it interesting to look at. Sometimes I get mixed up when I get to the bottom side because it's backwards. I have to kind of look to see which way the other petals are already going. Okay, so we've got, I'll put a little detail line in here. I'll commit to more of those whenever I get my inks down, but let's kind of see what it looks like this way. And so let's put, kind of starting up a little bit here and working downward. We'll put a line like that. Kind of when the flower came out of the ground, to kind of move the dirt up with it a little bit and kind of made a little mound there. And then I want to put a couple just little simple dots and dash lines. I don't want them kind of crazy and all over the place. If you do, that's fine. I just kind of want mine to kind of be somewhat neat and orderly there. And maybe a couple little circles here and there. But I'll show you when we get to our marker part what we'll do with these. So it's important to have some of those lines in there, but maybe not necessarily a bunch of them. And then over here I might do just some long, slender, kind of wavy lines. Just keep them thin, but kind of looks like maybe a little patch of grass growing back there in the background. And then maybe, since we're talking about kind of the rainy season, of our lives and of nature in general, we'll put maybe a raindrop there, just to make this whole picture kind of be a reminder that, things are tough, things can be scary, but they do get better. We just got to keep on doing what we know is the right thing to do, and then, let other people worry about taking care of that other stuff. We just do what we know is right, and the rest of it kind of falls together from there. So I've got my regular ink pen, not the marker, but just a regular ink pen now, and this is where I'm going to go in and start doing kind of choosing what my permanent lines are going to be on the drawing. And so of course I'll start out with the flower because it's in the front, so it's going to kind of get the preference over where the lines lay. So the petals will probably be in front of that leaf right here, but of course you'll still see the leaf, but this leaf might be in front of this part, and over here too. So we'll kind of decide that when we get to it, but I'm going to start by using my ink pen and doing like that. We didn't do that before in the pencil stage, but it's really easy to do. Just kind of make like a letter M, and it kind of makes the petals, they're kind of growing off of this part there. And that one's kind of a little bit behind that one. That's okay. All the flowers are different. They've all got just a little different shape to them, just like yours is going to be different than maybe your brother or sister that might be working on art with you, or whatever the case may be. If I were to draw this picture again, it would still look different, even for me being the same person drawing it both times. I'm going to go ahead and get all of those petals on the second layer. And then going back to all of our petals, let's just make a couple lines in there. I use 3 a lot, but it doesn't have to be. I like for them to kind of spread out. Might even have a couple that go all the way out. I kind of like the way that looked on some of those. Maybe I'll do a few more that kind of do that. Don't forget the guys in the back there. Just real simple, smooth lines that add a lot of detail to the picture. Doesn't have to be, a lot of real intricate work here. They can just be simple lines like that, and maybe a couple of little dashes here and there. And then in here, I'm going to do like a double line there, and then I'm going to do kind of a broken line around this way. And then around the bottom, just kind of some little hash lines there. Okay, so then I'm going to come down here to the main stem area and go a little thinner than I had originally drawn it with the pencil. Just little changes here and there. And then I will shorten this. Put an extra line there and fill it in black. It kind of gives a little dimension to that. And then I might do kind of one coming off the back there that I hadn't thought of before. And a couple lines here. And then kind of those lines in the soil that we talked about. If you do a circle and then kind of just tuck a little line back in there, kind of gives it a little depth to it, kind of a neat little shape. They don't even have to be circles. They can be, even kind of weird shaped objects like that. Just something interesting to look at that adds to the background. We want to kind of get away from just drawing a picture in the middle of the page and just leaving it there by itself. We'll give it some context, kind of what's going on around it. Before I forget, I'm going to go back and get these thin stems that kind of go to the leaves. Kind of those heart-shaped leaves that we made that you can't tell are hearts now, but that's all right. And then that center line there. couple lines that way. And then I like to offset mine just a little bit. Just kind of adjust the flow of your eye line, so to speak. Try to avoid too many direct parallel lines in a lot of that stuff. I don't want it to look like I took the picture, folded it in half, and then opened it. It's the same thing on both sides. I like for it to look like each side had as much imagination and thought that went into it. So that's kind of the way I think about it. It's okay if they match up, but that's just why I don't. It's okay if the lines are not perfectly straight, right? We're drawing kind of lines in the soil. It's got some raindrops that have hit it. You know, there might even be some like little pools of water. More interesting shapes in there. And let's not forget our little patch of grass. Just long, slender lines going kind of generally the same direction, but not exactly. Kind of like my hair in the morning when I wake up. It's mostly going the same way, but not exactly. And then just a couple little detail lines in there to fill up some of that space. And then we'll do a raindrop as well. And then if you make kind of like a crescent moon shape in there, and maybe like a little dot up there, kind of give some depth to that. A couple little more detail lines on my petals before we move on to the colors. Might as well put some grass over here too. Okay, so that's kind of that for the ink pen part. Let's set the tools that I've used already off to the side, and then we'll let this ink kind of sit for a minute, and then I'm going to use an eraser just because I've got a lot of overlapping lines here. I want to kind of clean it up just a little bit. Be careful not to do that before your ink has a chance to dry. We're just going to erase real lightly, and it's okay if your ink pen smears. That's okay too. You're not going to notice much once we get kind of the colors down from the colored markers and kind of the watercolor effect that we're going to do. Brush that stuff off there. Okay, so I'm going to start out with my yellow marker, and I'm really right now just going to go along the edge on one side. I'm just picking kind of that side. And you want to go about halfway, but also do the edge, do all of the part closest to the middle of the flower there, and then do about half of the petal. And same thing with just a little bit, working from the middle of the flower out on the secondary layer. Doesn't have to be exact. Even for me, that's the hardest part about art, is that there's just not an exact science to it. Everybody has theories on what makes, you know, this art that or whatever, but really when it comes down to it, it's just something that takes your mind off of what's going on around you. You get to create something and, you know, just enjoy it. You know, it doesn't have to be, you know, a super stressful thing for you, you know, to worry about the lines not going where you want them to and stuff like that. You know, we'll all figure it out eventually, right? So I'm going to take my orange marker and I'm going to highlight kind of just those detail lines. And I'm really just drawing over the top of those black lines. Might do a couple extras here and there. And a little bit back there. All right, looks nice and sunshiny to me. On the stem and the leaves and the grass and all that stuff, kind of follow what I'm doing. Kind of watch a little bit before you get started, but I'm going to go green just on one side. I want to leave a white line there, maybe just a little hint at green there, and then I'm going to follow the main line and the veins of the leaf. Main line, just the veins. You can outline the petal a little bit if you want to. The idea is we just don't want to put a lot of green on there because these green markers, you know, they have a lot of ink in them, and we're going to do something a little more subtle than that. And then down here, the same thing, just on the side there. I'm doing the underside because if there's light getting through, it's going to hit that outer edge there. And I might even put a couple lines here in the grass. Doesn't have to be all the way. Might even get that yellow marker back out. Kind of touch up an area, kind of like that. Kind of like that. And then a little bit of brown. And really with the brown, all I'm going to do is kind of go along a lot of this detailed stuff that we did. Kind of looks like it's going away, but we'll see it again. do kind of like a crescent moon there. And then this area that I cross-hatched there. Okay. And then take the blue. And I'm going to just pull kind of some vertical lines like that over there. And then I gotta move the camera just a little bit. In there, and then maybe some back there. Okay, so this is the messy part. Make sure you've got something underneath there. But I'm gonna bring over my little cup of water and my paintbrush. I'm just gonna dab it in there. And then just kind of for starters, just kind of run some of that water over those watercolor paint, or those washable markers. You can kind of see a little bit that they start bleeding outward. And into the browns here. And it's okay if that even comes out this way a little bit. And it's okay to brush kind of loose, because we want it to have kind of this nice watercolor effect. So if we get outside the lines of some of our leaves and grass and all that kind of stuff, that's okay. So kind of worth pointing out that if you do a really cool drawing with your washable crayola markers or any other markers that are a water-based ink, and you don't want it to do this, make sure you don't get them wet, right? Because they'll definitely do this if you get them wet. But we're taking advantage of that. We want them to do that. We're kind of trying to make them run like that. Trying to get the blue to spread out a little bit more. Okay. I'm going to get a little bit of water on my brush, and I'm going to kind of run it around the end of my blue marker. and get a little bit of a reflection in those little puddles of water. Okay. So I've got, I didn't tell you guys specifically to get these out, but I've got a couple paper towels here that I use to dry my brush off. And then I'm just gonna kind of dab the picture, pull some of that extra water off the top there. Now, anytime you're doing anything that's like a watercolor type thing, you can see it pulls some of the pigment off, some of the stuff that we put down. Sometimes if you don't, like when you're working with watercolor paints, and you get a lot of paint in one area and you don't want it to be that saturated or that dark, you can use a paper towel or even a dry brush and pull some of that off there, and it'll pull some of the pigment back up with it. I don't want it to do a whole lot of that. My paper is a little wrinkly, that's fine. We always expect that when we do watercolor type stuff. But I want it to be, pretty dry. I don't want a lot of stuff to come off of it. So just kind of pat it down with just a couple paper towels. I wouldn't rub it on there. I would just pat it and pick it up, pat it. Otherwise you'll kind of use the paper towel like a brush. And then I'm going to go around, just like I have on all the other pictures, my outside edge, and do a nice smooth line, bold, heavy black outline on all the things that are the most forward. So for example, on mine, the flower is the part that's closest to me as the viewer. So I want its black outlines to go over the top of all the other black outlines of the other things in the picture. And then the petal. This is the part that I would use like a Sharpie for, because it's an alcohol-based ink, and so the water shouldn't affect it as much as it does the water-based ink from your crayola markers. A little bit of my paper kind of comes up because it's wet, and then the tip of this marker is a hard tip, so it kind of makes it kind of tough. Just kind of work with it as best you can. Once the whole thing dries, it'll have a nice crisp feel to it again. Right now it's just a little damp, so it makes it easy to tear. Be careful of that. Go back in and put some of these lines back in the foreground. And of course, before I forget, little signature thing. And this is the part where you can go back in and put some like little detail lines if you want to do, dots, if you want to do crosshatch lines, if you want to darken some of the petals, and say like that one's in front, that one is, and that one is, and that one is. can do that. Maybe kind of hint at some clouds in here somewhere. Little details here and there, just interesting things to look at if you want to do kind of a squiggly line, or just kind of straight like whisker type lines. You can. Maybe a little fly in the background. All kinds of little things that you can do to kind of make it just individual and make it your own kind of drawing. So you can do everything that I did, or some of what I did, or none of what I did. Just give you a bunch of little ideas of things that you can add on there. Maybe a little bug came in here and chewed on that leaf a little bit. There's all kinds of cool stuff there. So watercolors with regular washable crayola markers, just something cool that you can do with stuff that you've already got at home. Again, that's just something that every artist can figure out. You know, take the supplies that you've got at home and find new and interesting things to do with them, to kind of keep it exciting and interesting, and to make your artwork all your own. I kind of like the way that this did this, because then I can put, just maybe another layer of clouds in there. So again, just anything that you want to do to kind of make it your artwork. Experiment with your crayons and your colored pencils and your markers. If you think you've discovered something cool, maybe you can teach me your style sometime along the way. Peel my tape and the top layer of my picture off there. If you're looking for good masking tape, I highly recommend whatever brand that is. It is a nice and sticky masking tape. So once we get this last one off, this one is ready to dry and then can be given to somebody as kind of a cool little one-of-a-kind hand-drawn or hand-painted postcard, something to cheer somebody up. So I hope you guys enjoyed doing this project. I'll do another project here in a little bit once I kind of get everything kind of reset and get different supplies out. We're going to do something with the water again, so keep your paintbrush handy and change out your water if you need to. I didn't go through hardly any water at all for this project. But we'll get you guys all kind of reset, and thanks for tuning in. We'll get you guys again.